Oh, Mr. Clare, I cannot be your wife. I cannot be." The sound of her own decision seemed to break Tess's very heart, and she bowed her face in her grief. "But Tess," he said, amazed at her reply, and holding her still more greedily close, "do you say no? Surely you love me." "Oh, yes, yes, and I would rather be yours than anybody's in the world," returned the sweet and honest voice of the distressed girl. "But I cannot marry you." "Tess," he said, holding her at arm's length, "you are engaged to marry someone else." "No, no." "Then why do you refuse me?" "I don't want to marry. I have not thought of doing it. I cannot. I only want to love you." "But why?" Driven to subterfuge, she stammered, "Your father is a parson, and your mother wouldn't like you to marry such as me. She will want you to marry a lady." "Nonsense. I've spoken to them both. That is partly why I went home." "I feel I cannot. Never, never," she echoed. "Is it too sudden to be asked thus, my pretty?" "Yes. I did not expect it." "If you will let it pass, please, Tessie, I will give you time," he said. "It was very abrupt to come home and speak to you all at once. I'll not allude to it again for a while." She again took up the shining skimmer, held it beneath the pump, and began anew. But she could not, as at other times, hit the exact undersurface of the cream with the delicate dexterity required, try as she might. Sometimes she was cutting down into the milk, sometimes in the air. She could hardly see, her eyes having filled with two blurring tears drawn forth by a grief which, to this her best friend and dear advocate, she could never explain. "I can't skim, I can't," she said, turning away from him. Not to agitate and hinder her longer, the considerate Clare began talking in a more general way. "You quite misapprehend my parents. They are the most simple-mannered people alive, and quite unambitious. They are two of the few remaining evangelical school. Tessie, are you an evangelical?" "I don't know." "You go to church very regularly, and our parson here is not very high, they tell me." Tess's ideas on the view of the parish clergyman, whom she heard every week, seemed to be rather more vague than Clare's, who had never heard him at all. "I wish I could fix my mind on what I hear there more firmly than I do," she remarked as a safe generality. "It is often a great sorrow to me." She spoke so unaffectedly that Angel was sure in his heart that his father could not object to her on religious grounds, even though she did not know whether her principles were high, low, or broad. He himself knew that in reality the confused beliefs which she held, apparently imbibed in childhood, were, if anything, Tractarian as to phraseology, and pantheistic as to essence. Confused or otherwise, to disturb them was his last desire. "Leave thou thy sister when she prays, her early heaven, her happy views, nor thou with shadowed hint confuse a life that leads melodious days." He had occasionally thought the counsel less honest than musical, but he gladly conformed to it now. He spoke further of the incidents of his visit, of his father's mode of life, of his zeal for his principles. She grew serener, and the undulations disappeared from her skimming. As she finished one lead after another, he followed her, and drew the plugs for letting down the milk. "I fancied you looked a little downcast when you came in," she ventured to observe, anxious to keep away from the subject of herself. "Yes, well, my father has been talking a good deal to me of his troubles and difficulties, and the subject always tends to depress me. He is so zealous that he gets many snubs and buffetings from people in a different way of thinking from himself, and I don't like to hear of such humiliations to a man of his age, the more particularly as I don't think earnestness does any good when carried so far. He has been telling me of a very unpleasant scene in which he took part quite recently. He went as the deputy to some missionary society to preach in the neighbourhood of Trantridge, a place 40 miles from here, and made it his business to expostulate with a lax young cynic he met with somewhere about there, son of some landowner up that way, and who has a mother afflicted with blindness. My father addressed himself to the gentleman point blank, and there was quite a disturbance. It was very foolish of my father, I must say, to intrude his conversation upon a stranger when the probabilities were so obvious that it would be useless. But whatever he thinks to be his duty, that he'll do, in season or out of season. And of course he makes many enemies, not only among the absolutely vicious, but among the easy-going, who hate to be bothered. He says he glories in what happened, and that good may be done indirectly. But I wish he would not so wear himself out now he's getting old, and would leave such pigs to their wallowing. Tess's look had grown hard and worn, and her ripe mouth tragical, and she no longer showed any tremulousness. Clare's revived thoughts of his father prevented his noticing her particularly, and so they went on down the white row of liquid rectangles till they had finished and drained them off, when the other maids returned and took their pails, and Deb came to scald out the leads for the new milk. As Tess withdrew to go afield to the cows, he said to her softly, "And my question, Tessie?" "Oh, no, no," replied she, with grave hopelessness, as one who had heard anew the turmoil of her own past in the illusion of Alec d'Urberville. "It can't be." She went out toward the mead, joining the other milkmaids with a bound, as if to try to make the open air drive away her sad constraint. All the girls drew onward to the spot where the cows were grazing in the further mead, the bevy advancing with the bold grace of wild animals, the reckless, unchastened motion of women accustomed to unlimited space, in which they abandon themselves to the air as a swimmer to the wave. It seemed natural enough to him now that Tess was again in sight to choose a mate from unconstrained nature, and not from the abodes of art. End of chapter 27.